Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Tozer. I want to thank everyone for coming today. I am with the Division of Developmental Disability Services. I'm very pleased to introduce Daniel Madrid, who will be here speaking about ABLE accounts today.
Nice to see everybody. As Jennifer said, my name is Dan Madrid. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Office of State Treasurer in Delaware. And prior to this role, I worked in the disability community with Division of Vocational Rehabilitation and Division for the Visually Impaired at Health and Social Services for a number of years. So coming to the Treasury office, it was my pleasure to take on the ABLE program and project, which I'm here to talk to you guys about today. I usually like to start, are there any questions that people want to make sure I answer today on today's presentation? Tax reporting. We can definitely talk about that. So the money that goes into ABLE is all after tax. So if someone sets up an ABLE account, the money that's ending up in that account has already been taxed. So there's no additional tax reporting necessarily required. And then any of the interest earned, if you pick an investment in an ABLE account, the interest grows tax-free and you can later spend it without being taxed on the interest. So there's really no additional tax burden or anything you have to report for somebody who has an ABLE account. So I'd like to start off with just a quick video. We'll see, hopefully it works. You guys can all hear it, kind of giving a general sense of the program and the plan. So let's roll it and see how it goes.
When you're telling family members that their young child is now going to be forever changed, that's a hard thing to tell someone.
As a parent, you have fears every day for your kid, regardless of if they're diagnosed with something. You're concerned about what tomorrow brings.
The day that Kayla was born, I was sort of paralyzed by fear for her future. It included everything. Will she be able to go to college? Will she be able to drive a car, get married? And a lot of that is financial based.
The challenge for a child with disabilities or special needs is that they're not allowed to save up, because if they do, then they would lose all of their benefits like Medicaid.
Why can't my daughter have the same rules apply to her as everyone else?
Once we realized that saving money for her wasn't really a possibility without jeopardizing her medical benefits, my husband came to me and said, this needs a change. We need to be a part of this change. And together with other families, we started working on ABLE.
ABLE is designed to help kids with special needs be able to save up analogous to the 529 plan so that kids with special needs are able to grow up, go to college, live independently, live as fulfilling a life as they're able to.
The ABLE account and ABLE plans are freedom. They provide families with freedom and opportunity to take money out when you need it.
An ABLE account is simple to open. It could take you, 10 minutes online to do.
Our hope is that Kayla's going to be able to go to college, get a career, not just a job, and to be able to save money. But there are other people with disabilities that may not be able to do that. And really what this does is it levels the playing field. Just like you or I, it doesn't matter what ability or disability we have, we can save for our future.
We want to get people to a point where they're looking to achieve something greater, and they're not necessarily bound by limitations.
The ABLE account means to save me money for freedom, and it's amazing.
So that's the 2-minute commercial. All right, so that's the 2-minute commercial, and I'll go into more detail about a lot of the features that are involved with ABLE plans. So as you kind of heard through the video, the initial concept behind ABLE, families across the country, this is a national program that was created, wanted to address a couple things. One was that people with disabilities, have a variety of additional expenses in life that they should be able to save for without being penalized by losing other benefits. and that there was also a disconnect that people without disabilities versus people with disabilities could save for their future, but people with disabilities, because they use other programs like Medicaid and Social Security, they can only save so much for their future. So that's really what drove the creation of ABLE. So as you can see on this slide, the ABLE accounts were created. This law was signed in Delaware in 2014, following the federal law that came out and went into effect in 2015. And then our office took a couple years to build out the program in Delaware. We decided to join a national alliance of states. So being Delaware, being little, we knew it was going to be hard for us to get our own program off the ground with the different regulations and program features that we wanted, including the customer service support, because there was no real funding for ABLE when it was created in Delaware. It was a $0 program. So we went out and we found what's called now the National ABLE Alliance. So 17 states plus DC over the years joined forces to create a program that could, for small states, large states, so you get the scale and the cost savings of being in a larger program by combining forces. So this is where we stand today with these other states plus DC around the country. And this also allows us to advocate and discuss disability issues on a national basis, legislation in Congress, and things that we want to change and improve. There's a lot of good that's come in being part of a large alliance and being a small state and leveraging a group like this across the country. So here's sort of the meat of how ABLE works and who qualifies for ABLE. So the first qualification to own an ABLE account today is that the individual has to have onset of their disability prior to their 26th birthday. This is something we are advocating nationally to change, to increase that age limit, preferably to 46. But as it stands today, the person has to have acquired their disability prior to age 26. The second requirement to open an ABLE account is that they're either receiving Social Security disability or supplemental security income, the SSI or SSDI program, because they're a person with a disability. Or a physician, if someone's not getting Social Security, they can have a written diagnosis from a physician, and as Social Security puts it, description of marked and severe limitations expected to last at least 12 months or more. So it's designed for people that have moderate to more significant functional limitations possibly in life, and that they acquired their disability prior to age 26. So let me stop here. This is an area where sometimes people have questions about eligibility for the program. Options. So if you're not getting Social Security, where you see on this page that third box, physician certification, if you, as long as you can attest when you open an ABLE account that a physician has provided a written diagnosis and that there's a description of functional limitations expected to last at least 12 months or more, that would also qualify you for an account. So that's why there's this flex. So it's either it's the age, and then either it's one or the other. You're either getting Social Security because you're a person with a disability, or you have a physician that's signed off on a diagnosis and a description of functional limitations. They're expected to, be more permanent in nature, I guess, is the way they look at it. One question that does come up from time to time is sort of how does ABLE function compared to other options that are out there for savings? And I like to say that they're complementary, and certainly ABLE doesn't solve every need. So there are limitations on how much you can put in an ABLE account. There are, if you're thinking a long term, if you're thinking of if someone gets like a lump settlement for something, there's trusts out there, there's other resources out there. If you're an individual with a disability who's also working and getting Social Security and you want to use work incentives, that's another option. So I just like to include this to, just make sure people are aware, ABLE, we're telling people about as one option to save and protect resources, but it's not the only resource. There are other resources out there. And if someone comes to us and it's really based on their situation, if we think a trust is a better resource, we'll guide them to a law firm that can assist with something like that and setting up a special needs trust. Some of the expenses that can be covered under ABLE. So once you open an account, the terminology that's used is that the funds in an ABLE account need to go towards qualified disability expenses. So it can't be used necessarily, the funding can't be used for everything, but it is pretty close to everything. There's a lot of categories that they've left open within ABLE to spend funds on. And pretty much anytime someone asks and says, can I use my money in ABLE account for this? Our program comes back and says, well, does it help? Does that person feel it improves their health, independence, or quality of life? And if they say yes, then we say, yeah, you should feel free to go ahead and purchase something with your ABLE funds. If they don't feel that, then maybe use a separate account to pay for something. But otherwise, the funds in ABLE, if they go into one of these accounts, they can go to education, housing expenses, transportation, employment expenses, assistive tech, personal support, healthcare, financial management, and then the all other sort of catch-all. If someone feels it helps improve their health, independence, or quality of life. Social, there's been a lot of questions about recreational and social activities, and for the most part, yes, that helps people improve health, independence, and quality of life. So it is designed so that the funds in these accounts can be used for a wide array of expenses. And I'm yet to really have been hard pressed to find times when people have come to us and said, no, that's really not something that you should use the funds for. Are there any questions about the expenses and what you can use the money for once it's in an ABLE account?
There's a question that just came through, Dan, asking about a computer purchase being a purchase that would be acceptable.
So will it be used to improve the person's health, independence, or quality of life? And if you say yes, then we would say yes. Yeah, personal care, food, lodging, I mean, those are all sort of fundamental needs that improve and maintain people's health, independence, and quality of life. So those are all perfectly acceptable to pay for out of an ABLE account. All right, so here's getting into some of the plan design and how it's set up. So if someone were to go to our website today and click the enroll button, all it really takes is you have to have a name, address, and social security number to open the account, and it's always in the person's name. It's that person's account, and they can only have one account. You can open an account with a balance as little as $25 to get started with it. You can even open it with $0 and fund it later. The system will allow you to do that if you just want to get it open and established, and then fund it later. It'll stay open, I think, for 6 months right now without a balance in it before the system contacts you and finds out whether you're going to use it or not, and the team at Census reaches out to you. Currently, you can put up to $15,000 per calendar year into an ABLE account. That's the maximum per year, and it can be funded from any number of sources: friends, family, birthday contributions, the individual. If they're working, you can put your Social Security directly into an ABLE account as well. And then the lifetime limit in what you can put into an ABLE account right now is $350,000. Given that the program's only a few years old, we got our program established and accounts started opening in June of 2018. We're still far away from people actually hitting this $350,000 limit. So, but as time goes on, we may raise that. That's something that we have control over within the state. For account owners who are also working, they a couple years ago passed what's called the Able to Work Adjustment Act, and that allows individuals who are working to put an extra $12,490 of their income into the account. So when you add that to the $15,000 you're already allowed to put in, it puts you up to $27,490 this year that someone could put into their ABLE account. The way the program is designed It protects Medicaid indefinitely, so you never lose your Medicaid benefits if your money's in an ABLE account and receiving Medicaid. SSI recipients, what they do is they allow you to save up to $100,000, and then you don't disqualify from SSI, but you stop getting the cash benefit from SSI. So say you reach $100,000 and one penny, and you're getting SSI disability. When you hit that point, Social Security turns off the check that they send you each month. But if you spend down those couple cents in your account, so Social Security sees that the next month and they start sending you your check again. So that's the way the cash benefit works with SSI. And it also protects for a number of other programs. So not just Medicaid, we've asked about even the FAFSA program for if someone's going to college. Would they look at your ABLE account and the money in it to qualify you for a grant or not through FAFSA? And the answer is no. They will not look at the money in a FAFSA. It's also under our state law, state programs, housing programs, rental assistance. They also can't look at the money sitting in an ABLE account to qualify you or disqualify you for programs. So it protects with individuals who are receiving a wide array of state and federal benefits in the way it's designed. There are some fees with ABLE. So there is a little bit of a cost that's associated with it. So right now the cost, if you're a Delaware resident and you have an ABLE account, it's $10 per quarter. So $40 a year to have an ABLE account. And if you're getting electronic statements as well. And then if you pick, there's a checking option, and we'll go over through these options in a second. There's a checking option that doesn't have a cost associated with it, but then there's investment options, and those investments also have investment fees attached to them, and they range from 0.34% to 0.38%, depending on which one is picked right now. So that's similar to what you would see within a 401k or a similar program where you're putting money in longer term investments, and then they'll have some fees associated with them. Right now, there's no tax deductions or additional tax incentives. People ask about that, whether, the money that's going in, can that be a credit or a deduction at the end of the year when it comes to be tax time? And unfortunately, there's not, but that's another area that we're advocating for in the future. So there could be additional benefits that may offset some of these expenses to owning an ABLE account. Yeah, you can establish an ABLE account through any of the states that have ABLE accounts. So if, I usually recommend to people look at your home state where the person's residing. That's usually where you'll get the best rate. You'll get the lowest fees usually if you're enrolling in your home state for that person. But people can enroll in any ABLE account in the country that allows people from out of state to enroll in it. So you can shop around, you can look at other states. They're managed by different providers, as you mentioned, Fidelity, ours is a census. There's a number of different ones throughout the country that you can look at, and some of them are structured a little differently too in terms of the investment choices. So you can do it, of course you can Google it. I also have a website on here that I recommend that's through the National Disability Institute. They run an ABLE page that looks at all the accounts in the country, and there's a link on the last page that you can go to if you want to do comparison shopping on ABLE plans.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask. That's great.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So that link is later in the presentation.
Yep. Yeah, you'll get that as part of the presentation as well. Yes, if you move to another state, I would recommend contacting, if you want to move it, I mean, it's really up to you. You would look at the state you're moving to and you could decide whether you want to move it. Our plan, we do allow other residents of other states to pick our plan. We have about a dozen people in it right now that have our Delaware ABLE account, and they live in other states around the country. But if you move to another state, all you would have to do is contact a census and talk to them and talk to if you wanted to manage, Pennsylvania is part of our plan. So if it is Pennsylvania, a census will move it in-house essentially for you. But if you went to a state that had a different plan administrator, like a Fidelity, and you wanted to move it to Fidelity, you would contact our plan and say, hey, I'm moving my account, I'm opening it with a plan under Fidelity in this state, and you do a plan-to-plan transfer. The other thing I would look at are if you move to another state, look at the tax advantages. Some states do have tax deductions and other incentives. So just be mindful of that. If you go to another state and they're going to give you a tax credit by having their state able plan, you probably do want to move it. You're going to, in the long run, you're going to get more bang for your buck. So I would recommend that case. I saw Mr. Diamond raised his hand as well.
Hi, Daniel. We had a couple more questions come in through the chat box. So there was another question about qualified purchases and along the lines of, say, a swing set or a trampoline. Would that be considered something?
If you feel it helps that person improve their quality of life, then yes, it's a qualified expense. So
perfect. And then there's two more here. The next question comes, if I earn more than the Medicaid threshold and put money in ABLE account, can I still qualify for Medicaid? What's the question?
If you earn more than the Medicaid threshold, so that's a little different than the asset question. So I guess the question is whether the person's working and their income is above a certain threshold to qualify for Medicaid. So that may not protect Medicaid, because this account really is only looking at your assets, not necessarily income. So the difference is, say you're working and making, $40,000 a year. What the ABLE plan does is allows you to put any of the money you earn away in here. When Medicaid comes to you and says, do you have more than $2,000 in assets? If it's in ABLE, you keep Medicaid. But on the other hand, if they look at your income and say, well, $40,000 is above what will allow you to earn in terms of income to qualify for Medicaid, they could potentially still disqualify you based on earnings. So I always say ABLE it's a shield for assets, but not necessarily income or your earnings if you're working and making more at an hourly rate. The program still, some have a right to still look at that and decide whether you're going to qualify for them.
Asking if funds from the 529 plans can be rolled into ABLE accounts.
They can. That was part of and great question. That was part of the Tax Act that came out a couple of years ago. I think 2 or 3 years ago now. They added a new provision that allows a 529 to be rolled over to an ABLE account. So if you have an existing 529, you can roll it into an ABLE plan now, which ABLE's a 529A under the IRS. You can move it over to this plan.
I had a question about, you said there's a checking account as well as the investment, both in the ABLE. I thought you had to choose one or the other. Can you have both?
You can have it all with ABLE. So the slide you see right here, what happens when you open the account and say it's that $25 you put in initially, they're going to ask you into what type of account you want to put it in. So, you could pick a portion of it to go into checking. You can pick a portion to go into investments. You have 6 different investment options in there. So with those 7 different choices, you can split up where the money goes on an ongoing basis. You can have both, and it's considered one account. The checking account, of course, has a debit card and checks. So if for the money in the checking account under your ABLE account, you can withdraw funds with the debit card and checks the way any of us would with a checking account. The investments you can move periodically. And I think they do allow you to even convert the investments over to the checking if needed. I think 2 to 3 times a year.
Daniel, we're not hearing you.
Financial penalty. So yes, your question was, can you put it into different things? And the answer is yes. So when you open the account, you have these 7 choices, 7 different buckets you can put it in, starting with checking account that's under the ABLE, which you use as a normal checking account. And then the 6 investment options were designed to kind of range for people who may want something more conservative, something that's, you're at lower risk of losing the money if there's a big change in the stock market, up to something more aggressive that you could potentially earn more, but you could lose more if there's a big change in the stock market. So there's these 6 choices built in for investments too. And anytime you're making a contribution into ABLE, you can split up the money however you see fit as the account owner. And I failed to mention too, you can also, when the account's established, if a family member is helping manage it, you can add them under limited power of attorney to kind of, you have a range of choices. You can have them, people with view-only access to your account. You can have people that have full control of your account when you set it up. So you get to make those choices too in who gets to manage the money and see it along with the account owner. But ultimately the account belongs to the person with a disability under ABLE. So, yeah, the checking account is through Fifth Third Bank. Unfortunately, with the Alliance, we didn't have a local option. We went with the national option, but yeah, certainly you would have your account under Fifth Third, and you could go see your account balances and all your, whatever's being contributed or withdrawn. You can see it through Fifth Third's website, and you get account statements the same way you always get account statements with a checking account. There is an ATM option locally. I mean, you of course, I think we all know, Wawa's and Royal Farms. I think you can do withdrawals without additional fees if you want an ATM option. But Fifth Third also has they're a partner with 7-Eleven. So if there's a 7-Eleven, you can also go to 7-Eleven and withdraw from your checking account without paying any additional fees on it. And then the last thing I have noted on here, there's a UGift option. So if for those of you who like to use social media and for special events and you want to post, instead of a present, just send a donation to my family member's ABLE account. You get a link that's linked to your account, and someone can click on it and make a donation, and it goes right to the ABLE account, and you can then decide where it goes in the checking account or the investments once it comes in. So these are a few profiles that we've pulled in, and we're actually working on pulling some Delaware specific profiles together. But as I mentioned before, there's the National Disability Institute, which I'll provide the website on, but they've done a really nice job. If you go to their website nationally, you see a lot of sort of just stories from people and family members who are using ABLE accounts and how they're using it, what they're putting it to. They have these national champions out there now. So in addition to being a good national nonprofit resource that can allow you to shop around for ABLE accounts, they also do a really nice job of just sort of sharing the story and perspective that I think all of you can relate to as family members and caregivers and individuals who are looking to, save for the future and maximize what you can do with your savings over time. So I encourage people to always look at NDI's resources. And as I said, it's mentioned right here. So the National Disability Institute ABLE Resource Center is this ablenrc.org website on this last slide. And then should anyone seek to open an account, there's a snapshot of the homepage here. You have the phone number, which is available Monday through Friday through a census. You have the email, and I'll certainly make sure Jen and everyone has my email, phone number. You can always call, email, talk to me. I'm happy to help guide people with any questions or resources they may need if they're looking at an ABLE account. So, and that brings me to the end of our presentation. Are there any other questions? You guys have had excellent. All right.
I'll add a last comment. You were talking about the investment choices versus the checking. This would be a benefit for families if there were no investment return, because it shelters the resources and prevents them from being counted against the income and resource limits. But the other advantage is you're allowed to invest in funds that have a rate of return. There's risk involved, but over a lifetime, it should generally earn more than it would just sitting in a checking or savings account. Our strategy is to have as much invested of the account at all times as possible, so that we have the potential for untaxed growth in the future.
Yeah, well said.
So Fidelity, right now have a Fidelity college investment plan.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a 529? Is that what we can roll over?
Yes. So
okay. Okay. And that's a
without seeing it, I can't tell you exactly, but usually, yeah, college savings plans are the 529 plans that can be rolled over into an ABLE account. Fidelity is the plan administrator for our college investment plan. That's also run by our office. A census was selected because we did it through a process where I think it was 14 states nationally had joined at the time, and Illinois was the lead administrator state. We put it out to an RFP nationally, and there were a number of programs and providers that bid on it, but ultimately a census won out. They offered at the time the best pricing to build a program like this and get it off the ground. But the program, given that it's public, is periodically going to go back out to bid. So over time, you may see that, we may stay with the census, but if someone else came along and gave us a better deal and gave our customers a better deal in terms of this customer support, administrative oversight, and the fees, we could potentially move to a different plan administrator. But that's how we sort of ended up initially with the census. They came in competitively and gave the 14 states who were involved at that time the best deal to start an ABLE plan, which these were completely new at the time. They were somewhat of a risk to the plan administrators who have never really worked in this arena in the past.
So Daniel, I have a question. So if I have a 529 account that has more than the annual limit that you're allowed to put into the ABLE account, can I roll it all over at once, or do I need to sort of roll it over in pieces?
Yeah, you'd have
so I don't go over that max contribution threshold?
Yeah, unfortunately, you'd have to do it in pieces right now. You could do 15,000 per calendar year. So you could do 15,000 in October 2020, and then in January, you could put the next 15 in, and then each new calendar year, you could put in another 15 until it's fully converted over. But right now, they have that hard line at the $15,000 per calendar year.
It says, if we open an ABLE checking account, can we change the account later to have both checking and investment?
Yeah, you can modify it at any time. You can rearrange your balance of investments to checking. I think you can, anytime you're putting money into the account, you can decide where it goes. So anytime you're adding money, you can pick how you want it split up among those 7 choices. Once the money is in some investments and you're not putting more money in, the program currently gives you 2 or 3 times a year that you can do it without any additional fee. You can organize, move the money around. And then after that, I think there's a small fee that a census charges, but historically, I think they've been waiving that. I don't think they're charging people if they decide to move the money around between the checking and investment options. They really haven't been too stringent with that so far.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, big thank you to Dan who is the Chief Operating Officer, who's joining us from Colleen Davis's office, the State Treasurer. We're really also like to thank Maria with the University of Delaware Cooperative Extension, and Ed Gutzing, one of our parent partners, in helping to facilitate and bring this information to our families. We know that it's important. This was recorded, so we may have to do some editing. That's always one of the gambles with this kind of format. I want us to be able to interact and be able to get the answer directly from the expert, but it makes it a little tricky to share these things publicly. So we'll take a look at those recordings, but regardless, the information will be made available. And if you have any questions, I will drop my name in the chat box. an email. Again, I'm Jennifer Tozer with DDDS and the Manager of Family Engagement for you. With that being said, if there's no questions for Dan, thank you so much. And you'll be able to follow up with me or your community navigator or your targeted case management entity if you have any other questions. And we still have 2 more sessions left in our financial series, and that registration is still open. So if you haven't registered, you can reach out and get that to me too. And thank you all so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer and Maria. Thank you for having us today. Thank you everyone for your participation. If you have questions, I'll make sure Jennifer gets my contact info out along with the presentation today.
Great. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.